Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Fertile Life with Dr. Shahin Ghadir and my guest today, Dr. Andy Galpin. Andy, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm very excited to have you. Generally speaking, I have all my guests introduce themselves and tell everyone a little bit about what they do and what we're going to be talking about today. So the floor is all yours.
Sure. So I'm a doctor, but not like you. So I have a PhD, not an MD. So I work at Cal State Fullerton, and I run our Center for Sport Performance there. So I'm a full professor within the Department of Kinesiology. So I guess you can think of what I do in three parts. So part one is research. So we perform and disseminate research on anything that we think can enhance human performance. So this could be from your classic biomechanics, so how the body moves, to exercise physiology. So this could be collecting basic blood samples or ventilation, VO2 max, things like this, to even muscle physiology, taking muscle biopsy samples and looking at tissue quality from single cell or even genetic level. So we do research and we publish that research. The middle tier, I guess, or second tier is I teach in the areas of strength and conditioning, human performance, nutrition, particularly for sport. And then part three is I work directly with professional athletes. So I work with a lot of Major League Baseball players, UFC fighters, professional boxers, Olympians, weightlifters, powerlifters, things like that. So that's basically what I do in a nutshell.
That's wonderful. Well, one of the biggest, as a fertility specialist, many of my patients, we don't want to just treat their fertility and nothing else. So for us, it's very important that we treat other aspects of their life, their nutrition and their well-being and their health. Aside from their fertility status is one of the most important things that we like to look at. And people like you are great motivational, inspirational physicians that help and give a lot of advice to our patients. One of the biggest challenges we have is that patients whose weight and overall well-being is not in tip-top shape have a really hard time conceiving and getting pregnant. I'm very curious. I know you work with top-notch athletes who are probably in really good shape and you know how to help them get better. You're rolling your eyes.
Rick, remember, first thing, professional athletes just means they're very good at sports. It does not mean anything else. So that's some of them are very unfit. Some of them have extremely poor lifestyles, nutrition, all these things. So I get this a lot when I do interviews. People always say, I'm not a professional athlete, so can you tell them the advice for them? And I always say, stop. It's almost the exact same thing. They just happen to be better at hitting a ball than you are, or happen to be better at jumping or something like that. So the advice is actually, it's fairly ubiquitous between the two groups.
That's wonderful. So when you were, let's say someone comes into you and one of the people that's going to be under you for a bit, what are the first things you do to assess how healthy someone is? And I just say healthy as a really broad point because I'm not sure if that's going to be their body fat. I'm not sure if that means what they eat. I'm not sure if that means what their exercise, but I'm very curious how you do your initial assessment on how healthy someone is.
Right. So what we look at is a metric we call your maximal physiological potential. And so this assessment process differs between each individual. So I could speak to you quite at length of what that looks like. But the broad sense is, for almost everyone, we want to capture this maximal physiological potential. And it's exactly like you opened the conversation with, because I don't really care what you want to do with your body, but if it's not functioning properly as a complete system, you're going to have problems. And if that problem means you can't reproduce, if that problem means you feel lethargic all day, if that problem means you aren't getting the adaptations to exercise training, I don't really care, because I simply know I have got to fix the vehicle and I have to have that performing at the highest ability possible. And then you choose to drive whatever road you want to drive down. That doesn't really affect me. So almost everyone we're going to run full physiological diagnostics on. And what that means is we're running full blood, stool, urine, saliva, and sweat. And that's going to give us a whole hundreds, well, actually closer to 1,000 markers internally. And we're going to look at those all simultaneously and try to identify what we call their performance anchors. So what are these 1 or 2 or up to 5 things that are really dragging the whole ship behind? Because there's unlimited things we could probably improve, but we're trying to look for those few things that are causing all the problems. And once we release those anchors, the ship tends to sail on like fairly well, almost by itself. And so we want to get these athletes into a position where They don't have to maintain a crazy supplement protocol, a crazy diet protocol. You're going to have to hit some basics, but we may have an intense kind of fixing protocol initially, but then we want to get you to a position where your body can just do what it's supposed to do.
That's really well said. Thank you. If you make it sound so simple, by the way. So that was a lot of bodily fluids that you're checking, by the way.
Well, this is, well, sorry to cut you off, but this is where it is a little bit different with the athletes because it's more expensive this way. And it's a lot of testing that's somewhat frivolous, but they don't have 3 or 4 or 6 months to wait. And so it's sort of like, I'd rather just pay a little more upfront, do it all, and make sure there's no, what they always say is, we want no more guessing games, no more check work. I'd rather pay and know. And that's not always needed. You could get a lot of answers without doing that. But for these folks, the time is more valuable than the money.
How can we take the knowledge that you have for assessing a athlete to a reproductive age woman who cares tremendously about her future fertility and also what to do with her body to get it as healthy as possible?
Yeah. Well, one part of it is you just can't, right? You can't be your own physician with 20 years experience with professional athletes like I have. Okay, great. I'm happy to give you some, what I call the 90% though. So this is the 90% of most things are going to be 90% effective for 90% of people. In other words,
we'll take that.
If you start here,
that was a great disclaimer, by the way, a great disclaimer.
That's why I call it the 90%, right? Now with the athletes, they pay to make sure that they're not missing that 10%. But for most folks, this will work, right? And so you just have to run into a couple of different nodes. So node 1 is your physical body, okay? And so your physiology has to be functioning at least okay. So what's that mean? Hydration is important. Drink half your body weight in ounces of water. So if you weigh 200 pounds, drink 100 ounces of water a day, okay? It's important. I don't care that you're really on that number, but if your number of water is 0 a day, that's a problem. Go to the next one, food. What do most people have to do? Well, people can survive and thrive in a lot of different types of eating. So I don't care if it's paleo or Mediterranean or DASH diet, like all these things can work. The biggest factor to maintaining proper nutrition is, are you on a system that is compatible for you? In other words, will you follow it? Will you maintain it 80% of the time? That's really all you have to do to get most of the benefits, right? Can you come up with a system? What that typically looks like is you have to have a reasonable control of calories, 1,000 ways you can do that. Right? I don't even care that you're dead on to a couple of hundred, just a rough idea of food intake. Number 2, you have sufficient amount of protein. We put almost everybody at least a gram of protein per pound. You don't have to be there, but if you're at, if you're 200 pounds and you're consuming 50 or 60 grams of protein a day, I've just never seen anybody who's healthy that does that. Potentially you can, but again, we're shooting the 90%. It's 90% effective for 90% of people. So if you're 200 pounds, get at least 125 grams of protein most days, something like that. 150, 175 would be better. The next one, you need to have a lot of variety of fruits and vegetables, and those need to be coming in daily. So different colors, different textures, different cooking styles, different types. Get all those things in. After that, then you need to have control of liquid calories. So a lot of folks just simply don't understand the amount of calories that are coming in all the liquids that they're consuming. Doesn't mean you can't have any liquid calories, but you just need to acknowledge those things. After that, things matter a lot less. If you can get those few things down with your diet and build a system that works for you, you're going to be in a really good spot from the nutrition side. So that's hydration, then there's nutrition. You need to have some physical activity and some movement. And I could talk to you at length about that, but I'll keep it kind of short for now. You need to have a consistent sleep schedule. So one of the things we know very clearly throughout the literature is consistency matters more than total amount. So if you're like, hey, there's just no way I can get 8.5 hours of sleep every night because I got kids and jobs, and okay, I understand. But can you go to bed at roughly the same time every night and wake up at roughly the same time the next morning? If you can do that, you're in a really good spot. From there, then the last couple of things start to move out to your psychosocial, which are things like Do you feel purpose in life? Do you feel like you have some sort of community and connection? And those are the two big things that will land on that side of it, is purpose and social connection. So those are the giant rocks that people have to wonder. So what we do with our initial assessment, honestly, before we even do the blood and saliva and urine, is we kind of look very quickly at all those and see if we can see any major red flags. And if we do, then we're probably going to spend most of our time or outsource. Like for example, if it's just like, oh my gosh, okay, you're clearly extremely unhappy. All right, let's get you to work with somebody who's a professional in that area. And then let's devote our resources and time into that.
That's great. So that's a lot of information right there, and I like a lot of it. I want to touch base on the sleep for a second. I can't tell you how many of my patients I talk to who tell me they have major problems sleeping and they didn't in the past. And I'm about to throw myself into that pile of people because I was the best sleeper that I ever knew. And I don't know why, or if it's a new thing, or if it's something going on, that sleep has become such an issue for so many people.
Yeah. So this is an area we spend a lot of time on. So there's a couple of things to think about here. Reasons why folks don't sleep come down to a few categories. First one we call hygiene. So this isn't brushing your teeth. What I mean by sleep hygiene are the basics that most people have heard of. So is it quiet in your sleeping environment? Is it dark? Is it the proper temperature? Do you shut down your computer before you go to sleep at a time where you can actually calm down? Things like that. So we'll start with diagnosing hygiene. In fact,
sleep hygiene is very important. And I think most people don't know. People that have dinner and breakfast in bed and work in bed and read in bed and do all that in bed, then the bed doesn't remember that it's for sleeping. So that's kind of what the sleep hygiene is in a nutshell for people who don't understand what that means.
Yeah, it's your habits. Just like you would kind of go through, if you had to have the best day of work ever, if you would probably go through a pretty specific routine in the morning and make sure you drink some water and you went to the bathroom and your teeth are brushed and you're ready and you're prepared. Like you would have this process so that you have the most effective day possible. You kind of have to do the same thing for sleep as much as you can. We actually have some pretty cool scientific tools that we can put a box in people's room and we can measure everything from their CO2 cloud to the particulates in the room and just do a bunch of measure the lux in the air and stuff like that. So we will diagnose if it is environmental. So maybe your hygiene is correct, but your mattress is leaking a bunch of toxins in the air that are actually disrupting you. And we actually will measure those things to check that stuff off the list or on the list. So outside of hygiene, then it's physiology. So you could be having disruptions in cortisol, which we know will keep you awake. So cortisol is the thing that keeps you awake. And when you're extremely stressed, cortisol is high, right? Well, if you're really stressed, cortisol is high, and cortisol is still high at night. And so when it's supposed to be all the way low to put you to sleep, it's high. And so you feel like you can't go sleep. So we'll ask basic questions like, do you have a difficult time falling asleep? Or is it more difficult to stay asleep? And now we're getting insights. Is it a serotonin issue or is it a melatonin issue? And so from there, we can measure it. For example, we've seen this now more in the last 4 months than I've seen this in my entire career, where people have 10 to 100 times the upper range limit for circulating melatonin. So what's happening is people are really sleepy all day. And so they're like, man, but I can't sleep at night. And so they take melatonin. And a typical serving size is 3 to 5 milligrams. Well, what's actually happening is the dose on the bottle says 5 milligrams, but the dose in the actual capsule is much higher. And so the amount that's floating in the circulation is just rocketing out of control. So they wake up the next morning and they're at 10 to 100 times the amount of melatonin, which makes you feel sleepy. That should be in their body. And so because of that, they feel sleepy and groggy and awful the next day. So what do they do the next night? Take more melatonin because they feel terrible and they're sleepy. And I'm like, I need to get better sleep. And they end up in this horrid cycles of being stuck. So we're going to check all the physiology, make sure dopamine, serotonin, melatonin, cortisol. We're having these pulse and depending on, every other things, different hormones for males versus females to make sure that physiology is checked. So if hygiene is in check, physiology is in check.
Is there a way to naturally get your cortisol level down?
Oh yeah. You want to know some super easy ways? Number
Yes.
one, have a sleep routine, a very whatever that means to you. Typically, that's 45 minutes of where you just start. Phone is down, laptop is down. I'm going to now go to my process, right? I'm going to, typically, I'll just tell you. Typically, it's 45 to 60 minutes. Work is done. Make sure that your next day is fully prepared. So if you have the kids, got to have kids' lunches made. Don't go to sleep without, because it's going to keep you up all night remembering to make the kids' lunch. We write down a to-do list for tomorrow. So what are the things you've got to get done? Oh yeah, that's right. I got to drop this thing off at the store. I got to call this guy back. I've got to just write those things down so you're not up all night trying to make sure you don't forget. That's step number 3. Then 4, it is some sort of physiological trigger for sleep, which for most people is a hot shower. Getting hot before bed is a really effective tool. And then the last one is, we will almost always recommend doing a 5 to 12 minute, we'll call these breathing routines. So this could be something like just closing your eyes and doing a box breathing. So box is forced equal side squares. So it could be inhale for 5 seconds, hold that for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, hold that for 5 seconds. And just do 10 or 15 or 20 of those boxes, and you'll be shocked how zen it makes you. You could do yoga nidra, which is a really cool sleep-like state inducer. It basically, you lay on your back and you do things like, okay, check in with your toes. All right, relax your toes. Okay, relax your ankles. Okay, cool. And you just kind of walk yourself up and you feel your entire body relaxing. There's 1,000. In fact,
Yeah,
on Netflix,
I've done a meditation before that does that. It walks you through every part of your body to tighten and let it go, tighten and let it go. Before you know it, you fall asleep.
100%. So it's really, really.
I think
so
basically you're describing meditations in my eyes, and the way you're saying it. The breathing routines are part of meditation. I think that's something that we take care of our diets, we take care of our exercise. No one realizes that they need to take care of their mind and their brain as well. And a lot of that has so much to do with how you get that cortisol level down.
And there's all kinds of apps. There's Waking Up, there's Calm, there's Headspace, there's Numa, Pnuema. There's a ton, and just find the flavor that works. There's just YouTube videos, just YouTube video yoga nidra, YouTube video meditation for sleep. There's thousands of 5 to 10 minute videos that are all free. You can just follow along with.
Yeah, there's some data out there that melatonin, someone out there at one time or another said that melatonin potentially helps fertility. I don't know. I used to love melatonin. I currently hate it. I don't know why. It doesn't even help me in a good way, or I can fall asleep and then wake up quickly afterwards, and it didn't even do its job. But I didn't realize that it can have such a long lasting half-life in your body and doesn't.
It's not supposed to. It's supposed to have like an hour-long half-life. It should be down pretty quickly. But we've seen more and more of these labs that are just coming back just out of control.
I think people think it's safe and that there's no risk of toxicity or overdose with it.
Yeah, so the phrase I always use is there's no free passes in physiology. If you're putting a hormone in your body, it's going to do something. And there's nothing we know of that has no side effects. So I will use melatonin occasionally, but it's not in my top 25 things I'm doing for sleep. It's way, 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 way down the list. And it's typically only for very short spurts.
Is there anything that you'd recommend before that for people, supplement wise?
Sure. Magnesium.
Magnesium.
Yeah, magnesium we know has potential effects there.
I've been told, I personally took the magnesium calm, the powder.
Yep.
But I was waking up with horrible headaches in the morning, horrible, migraine, and then it reminded me of my days when I was an OBGYN resident, and we used to put patients with high blood pressure and preeclampsia on magnesium, and they used to get a splitting headache. And I think I'm doing that to myself.
Yep. Yeah. Nothing has zero side effects, right? There's all kinds of other things that can happen with magnesium too, with your GI.
Yes, I guess GI's tract for many people going a lot.
Yep.
Okay, that's very interesting. So Gosh, so much good information. I like wish I was like making an outline of this that I could like publish for my patients as we do it, but it's all here so people could listen to it.
Just make the podcast mandatory listening before your new patients.
Yeah, I know. This is amazing. This is really good. We're bringing things to the table that most of my guests necessarily don't. So I really appreciate it. I'm really enjoying it myself. I could just continue to go on and do like my own personal session with you right now. It sounds like I am. So if someone wants to see you, how does that work?
Yeah, so we typically only work with professional athletes, or we would say elite high performers. So folks like that.
And is that all through the university setting?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. So we work actually, because we work with the highest paid players in almost all the big sports. It's all remote. So
oh wow, got it. And who else is on your team other than yourself? Like from what different areas do people get addressed and assessed?
So directly, my team is me.
Okay.
Right. And then within that, what we do is based on the diagnostics that come back, I have a pretty unlimited network that I will then outsource to. So if we need somebody who needs like fertility issues, that person wouldn't be me, right? I don't have anybody in my network that has that, but I'd be searching, right? That's typically not the people that come to me. But if we have sports psychologists, I gotta Rolodex those folks. If they have total stress management that they need, I've got Brian McKenzie, the best in the world at taking people to really understand their own physiology and stress load. So we have these things built in within me. And then Dan Garner is someone who I collaborate with almost exclusively on this stuff. So Dan and I will run most of the physiology diagnostics. He and I will almost always look at all of our labs combined, just because, two heads are better than one of these things. So Dan Garner is fantastic at this stuff as well. And then it just spreads from there.
It just reminds me, I was a kinesiology major the first month I was at UCLA. Like, okay, this is a little too intense. I can't do this for my whole career. So I changed careers to psychology. I changed my major actually, did all the pre-meds and then did all of the anatomy stuff when I got to med school, of course.
Yeah.
But it's quite a science of how the body is the most unbelievable machine in the world. And it looks like you've mastered it very, very well, and you're helping people left and right. So I love that, and congratulations to you for doing so. Thank you for bringing a different kind of perspective to us. I think it's important that we all got that, and really appreciate that. If there's any last message that you wanted to give someone, and this is kind of going to be some extrapolation, because I know that, I was just thinking as you were talking, all the pro athletes I've had that have come in with their wives and left my practice very happy and very pregnant. I don't do assessments the way you do, but if there's any last tidbit you'd like to give a fertility couple, whether it's a male or female, one thing I did want to address is that we have so many men taking so many weird supplements. And I can't tell you how many of these fit guys that are taking these powders that they have absolutely no idea what is in these pre and post workout stuff. And they have like the worst sperm I've ever seen. And when we get them off, it goes everything. Do you have any comment on that? Sorry, that's not gonna make your last comment, but it just.
No, it can't be the last one. But yeah, I have a lot of comments because we spend a lot of time correcting male physiology, a ton. Female is far more complicated, right? So we have to run additional diagnoses on females and do other things because it's not standardized throughout the month, especially, right? And it's just a more complicated system, just no question about it. But the men are the ones we have to fix because we're just like, what are you doing? Women tend to not take things, in terms of exogenous hormone supplements, things like this. Men just tend to just throw things in their mouth. And I can't tell you how many DHEA pools we've had to fix, how many estrodiols that are just higher than total testosterone. We're just like, and stop taking this damn thing.
I think the one very important message is that I don't think men in your world understand that testosterone supplementation completely turns off your sperm production. Zero.
Peace out. It's gone.
So, the sad thing is, Andy, that I don't think there's a lot of physicians out there out of the world of reproductive medicine that even know that. So
Yeah.
the guy will go to their primary care doctor. He's like, I'm a little tired and I don't feel so good. And the guy's like, well, let's put you on testosterone.
No.
Never will ask if you and your wife are trying to have a baby. It does not even understand that within about a month to 3 months, you will have zero sperm coming out of you. And then it takes a while to get that back.
I can't tell you how many testosterone we've doubled or tripled without giving a single medication to.
So
Not a single one.
My biggest recommendation is weightlifting, building your largest muscles in your body, building your leg muscles, because from what I know, testosterone, natural male testosterone is generated from muscle. And the larger muscles of the body are the ones that do that the best. I want to hear your point of view on that.
So your technical explanation is a little off, but your point is correct. In other words, heavy strength training is perhaps the second biggest lever you can push if you want to increase testosterone for the vast majority of people. Sleep is the number one.
Oh, wow.
Especially when you have suppressed sleep or really suboptimal sleep. If you just pull that throttle back a little bit, testosterone tends to fly off. Strength training would be the second one. So there's two ways to think about enhancing testosterone. Number one is you can do things that increase. Imagine you're driving a car downhill, okay, and you want to go faster. Well, the first thing you can do is just take your foot off the brake. Second thing you can do is hit the gas, right? Well, there's no point of hitting the gas until you take your foot off the brake, because now you're just going to blow the whole thing to pieces and you're not going to go any faster, or you might go slightly faster, but why not just take your foot off the brake? Here's what I mean. If you add strength training to your life and you add some of these other things we could have talked about next time or something, that's hitting the gas. But our first step is always, let's take our foot off the brake. So what are you doing right now that's currently causing your system to go low? Because once we take your foot off, it just jumps right back up to where it wants to be. And that is clearing basic infections. These are what we call hidden stressors. So there's a whole host of things that can happen internally that are suppressing testosterone that you may be asymptomatic with. And this is a whole gut-related issue. So we run pretty advanced diagnostics inside. Could be infections and parasites and a whole host of dysbiosis and other issues going on internally. It could be basic endocrinological issues. So just ratios are off. It could be inflammatory stuff. It could be heavy metal toxicities. It could be any number of these things that are fairly easy to clear. And once we do that, it's just we did nothing but put you in the sauna 4 times for a month and change the water filter in your house, and then maybe gave you this probiotic that's very specific to your stuff, not just a random one. And boom, all of a sudden testosterone doubled. And we've just done things like that a tremendous amount. There could be allergens in we did this one time with actually a guy in Texas and found out he was allergic to one of the trees in his neighborhood, and basically got that cleared, and all of a sudden his testosterone doubled.
Wow.
It doubled in 45 days.
Wow.
So that's a pretty quick turnaround. And all he had to do was realize, oh crap, those trees down the street I'm pretty sensitive to. So food intake that your body doesn't agree with. There's just a lot of things we can do to figure this stuff out. So we will always err on that side. It's like, if you're not strength training, you have to do it. If you're not sleeping well, do that. That will fix most people's stuff. If you've done those two things and you're just like, I still don't know if it's working, or you're like, to hell with it, I'll pay whatever it takes and I just want to get this fixed now, then we can get things fixed pretty quickly with I would say just an exceptionally high success rate. So
that is wonderful. Do you have a book that you've written by chance?
I have, actually. It's right here.
Okay. So not everyone's going to see, they're going to hear this more. We want to kind of give us that information.
Yeah, the book is related to almost nothing we just talked about today. So it's not a book on these things, if you will.
Okay.
The name of the book is Unplugged. So it's basically a guide to how to understand how to use and not misuse fitness tracking technologies. So Apple Watches, heart rate monitors, things like this. So if you look at the clinical data on that, fitness trackers can enhance fitness in some people, but can also make things significantly worse. So there's been a number of clinical trials where they give 2 sets of people. One set gets the trackers, one set gets nothing, and the folks that get the trackers actually gain weight relative to losing it. And it's really important to understand what these things do to you. So if you're the folks who buy those things and stuff and you're interested in training technologies, that that book sort of walks you through like, here's what they can do and here's how to use them properly and stuff like that.
Wonderful. And if anyone's interested in following along and learning more about these pearls of wisdom that you have, how do they follow you?
Yeah, it's Instagram and Twitter. Dr.Andy Galpin, so Dr. Andy Galpin are the place where I put out the most information. My YouTube page is all of my university lectures and a bunch of other stuff. When I give talks and stuff, I put those up around the country. Those are all up there for free if you want to learn more about nutrition and the basics of strength training and all these things. Fat loss, I've got several hours on fat loss, exercise programming, and all this stuff to do there. And if you think you might be interested in working with us, again, it's not for the faint of heart. It's a pretty in-depth process. You're going to work your tail off for 30 days. I'm going to collect and track and do all kinds of stuff. Then get in contact and you can do that through my website, andygalpin.com. And it's a process.
Do you have a senior citizen program?
We don't have a senior citizen program, but we have we talk about the professional athletes and we everything is built around that. But the reality of it is I'd be lying if we don't work with the CEOs, VCs, and the executive program. So we have a couple of executive programs.
That's great.
One of them is more like the diagnostics, and we give you everything back. And the second one is actually a 6 to 12 month program where we do those diagnostics at the beginning, and then you get rolled right into our coaching program. So you get continuous coaching and monitoring for all your stuff for the next 6 months.
That's fantastic.
Which is called our Rapid Health Optimization program, and that is 100% built for the 30 to 60-year-old person who has a job and a family, probably. So
wonderful. Well, I appreciate your time. That was for me such a learning experience. Lots of wisdom there and lots of knowledge there. So thank you so much. And we hope that everyone who's listening today enjoyed, and they can find this on the Fertilife website and actually the Instagram page. We're going to put all of the information out there.